Welcome to the show, friends, neighbors, chums, cronies. On this blessed Ash Wednesday, today we'll run down and review the Democratic debate, which happened last night. And in many ways, and for many reasons, it was an embarrassment, as it always is for the Democratic Party. But that fortunately makes it hilarious for everybody else. Hilarious until you remember that these people want to control the country, and then it becomes sad. So it's embarrassing, hilarious, sad. It's kind of a roller coaster emotional journey when you watch these debates. Also, speaking of the Democratic Party and embarrassments, they yesterday blocked a bill that would have prevented clinics and hospitals from leaving babies born after botched abortions to die. The bill would have guaranteed those born children at least basic medical care. Well, Democrats blocked that and said, no, it's better to just let the children die. So we have to talk about that as the Democratic Party again reveals itself to be the party of evil. We'll discuss that. Also, 5 other news headlines worth knowing about. Plus, today I have the distinct honor of canceling The New Yorker. I'm going to officially cancel The New Yorker, and I'll explain why. First, a reminder that my book, Church of Cowards, officially went on sale yesterday. You can get it now. The response to the book so far has been very encouraging, and I appreciate everyone who's bought the book so far and reached out to me about it. If I were to sum up the point of the book in 3 sentences or less, well, I guess the point is really just right there in the title. This is about a wake-up call to complacent Christians, but really what I'm calling for in the book is for the revival of Christianity's fighting spirit, because ours is a warrior faith, or at least that's what it's supposed to be. That's what it has been historically. That's our heritage. And maybe we are not called to a physical fight, at least in this region of the world these days, but we are called to a spiritual fight, a moral fight. We can't shrink away from that, and we have been, though, for many decades now, and that's why I wrote the book. And that was more than 3 sentences, I suppose, but you can go to Amazon and buy it now, so please do that. All right, debate last night. I suppose on this day of repentance, it makes sense to start with the Democratic debate. As watching it, for me, was an act of penance. Overall impressions right out of the gate, a rather catastrophic night for the Democratic Party. Let's begin with the optics, okay? Let's think about this. This is a debate for the Democratic nomination. And that is supposed to be, we're told, the progressive party, the enlightened party, the party of inclusion, the party of diversity. Well, who was on stage last night? 2 billionaires, not just 1, 2 in the Democratic debate, 3 millionaires, 3 men over 70, only 1 person under 50, all white people, no minorities. That was the debate. So old white folks, almost exclusively. That's, and mostly men. So that's what the Democratic Party has to offer. Their field is, at this point, what they accuse the Republican Party of being. That's exactly what they are. Other impressions, first of all, Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, it concerns me that every time I watch one of these debates, or I watch them giving a speech for as long as I can tolerate it, it seems clear to me that they are not capable of saying anything or answering any question without screaming. Everything they say, have you noticed that? Everything they say, they're screaming. I'm not sure I've ever heard either one of them say anything in a normal inside voice. So I was imagining last night, like, how it must sound when Biden goes to order a pizza at Pizza Hut. The guy says, "Hi, welcome to Pizza Hut. Can I take your order?" "Listen, the fact of the matter is that I need a pepperoni pizza." "Why are you screaming?" "Let's be clear about this. I'm serious. Let's be clear. Barack and I had pizza every night. I invented pizza. I passed the legislation that makes it possible for you people to eat pizza. I'm serious." That's Joe Biden's answer to every single question. Let's be clear. I'm serious. Barack, listen, and the fact of the matter. It's a combination of those words screamed. And of course, in Bernie's case, not only does he scream every answer, but he's also incapable of uttering a sentence that doesn't include the word billionaire. Now, he used to have a lot more range in his vocabulary because he used to talk about millionaires and billionaires. So he used to have 2 words he could say. But then he became a millionaire, and so he doesn't want to rail against millionaires anymore because he is one. And so now it's just billion. Now he's limited to just 1 word. His method of arguing is to accuse anyone who disagrees with him of being a billionaire, which is very similar to the general sort of left-wing method of arguing, where normally they accuse anyone who disagrees with them of being a Nazi. Now Bernie's not opposed to using that method, but he prefers, for him to be a billionaire is worse than being a Nazi. So his comeback to everything always is, oh yeah, did the billionaires pay you to say that? And then he waits for the applause. Although last night it was interesting that the audience seemed to be stacked against him. So every time he went for the billionaire comeback, the billionaire diss, it solicited boos in the audience, which was interesting. But probably my favorite thing from Bernie last night was when he attempted to reach out to minority communities by promising to help them sell drugs. And that really did happen. That's something that he really did. And we'll play that clip for you in just a moment. But first, let's check in with our good friends over at Rock Auto. You know, the thing that always impresses me about rockauto.com when I go to their website, which I go frequently for our various car problems, which we unfortunately frequently have, is just the selection that they have there. They have seemingly everything you could possibly need. And it's extremely easy to navigate. You know, chain stores, the thing about the chain stores, you go there, they have different price tiers for professional mechanics and do-it-yourselfers. They're going to decide, you know, based on your experience level, how much they're going to charge you. Well, rockauto.com doesn't do that. Same price for everyone. It doesn't even require a membership or account or anything to log in. You just go there, you get what you need. rockauto.com always offers the lowest prices possible rather than changing price tiers based on what the market will bear. And so they're just going to give you low prices, great selection, and that's it. That's what you're getting. The rockauto.com catalog is unique, remarkably easy to navigate. Rockauto.com has everything from engine control modules and brake parts to tail lamps and motor oil and even new carpet. Whatever you could possibly need, they've got it there. So go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. That's rockauto.com. Write Walsh in there. How did you hear about us box? So that they know that I sent you. All right, so Bernie Sanders was trying to appeal to minority communities, and his attempt to appeal to them was by promising that he would help them sell drugs. Listen to this.
And I'll tell you what else we're going to do. We're going to provide help to the African American, Latino, Native American community to start businesses to sell legal marijuana, rather than let a few corporations control the legalized marijuana market.
Yes, that's Bernie's minority outreach. He's gonna let them sell their drugs. Now, okay, I know the Democrats get the advantage of a double standard on racial issues and on all other issues, of course, but how is that not the most racist thing that any candidate has said through this entire election cycle and beyond? That's when he thinks of helping, you know, young black people and Hispanics, that Asian Americans, you know, this is what comes to mind. This would be like if he said he wanted to help the Irish American community. He has a great plan for helping them, and he's going to offer half-off discounts on all whiskey. That's his plan to reach out to Irish Americans, which, as an Irish American, I would very much appreciate that, especially as we're trying to stock up all the necessary provisions for the coronavirus. And it's very important, by the way, that you're prepared for that and you have all the whiskey you're going to need to get through it in case there is any disruptions in the supply chain of whiskey, or if you can't get to the store. But so I would appreciate that, but still, I mean, we can't deny it's pretty demeaning. But of course, the gaffe that everyone is talking about tonight today is Biden making a rather startling claim about gun violence. Listen to this.
But my friend to my right and others have, in fact, also given to the gun manufacturers absolute immunity. Imagine if I stood here and said we give immunity to drug companies, we give immunity to tobacco companies. That has caused carnage on our streets. 150 million people have been killed since 2007 when Bernie voted to exempt the gun manufacturers from liability. More than all the wars including Vietnam, from that point on. Carnage on our street. And I want to tell you, if I'm elected and I'm coming for you and gun manufacturers, I'm going to take you on and I'm going to beat you.
150 million people have died from gun violence in the past 13 years. That was the claim. 150 million people. That's half of the U.S. population. So what I learned last night is that half of the U.S. population is currently dead from gun violence, which I guess the bright side of that, I mean, if there can be a bright side to 150 million people dying, the bright side is that now fewer people will die from climate change. So when climate change kills us all in 10 years or 9 years or whatever it is, now there's just the devastation will in some ways be lessened by the fact that most of us will have already died from being shot. So, I mean, look, I'm trying to find a silver lining around that cloud, and that's the best I could do. Now, Elizabeth Warren, here's something that stood out to me. She launched into an attack on Bloomberg, and this seems to be her main focus is attacking Bloomberg for some reason, even though Bloomberg hasn't even contested, hasn't even been in the contest yet for any of the primaries up to this point. But she's very focused on Bloomberg. But there's something about this moment that really stood out to me. Watch this.
You know, this is personal for me. When I was 21 years old, I got my first job as a special education teacher. I loved that job. And by the end of the first year, I was visibly pregnant. The principal wished me luck and gave my job to someone else. Pregnancy discrimination, you bet. But I was 21 years old, I didn't have a union to protect me, and I didn't have any federal law on my side. So I packed up my stuff and I went home. At least I didn't have a boss who said to me, kill it. The way that Mayor Bloomberg
never
alleged
said that.
to have said to one of his pregnant employees.
Okay, now, of course, the story she's telling there about pregnancy discrimination is bogus, of course. It's been debunked like almost everything else she says. She's a pathological liar. She can't help herself. She lies. It's a compulsion. She can't stop herself from doing it. She lies like she breathes. But that's not the part that was interesting to me. At the end of the clip there, she accuses Bloomberg of telling a pregnant mother to kill it, being the baby. Now, I don't know if Bloomberg said that or not. He denies it. Who knows? Sounds a little far-fetched, but maybe he said it. That's not the point. Here's my question. Why does she have a problem, Warren that is, with somebody suggesting that a woman kill her baby? Warren is radically pro-abortion. In fact, radically pro-infanticide, as we'll talk about in a few minutes. From her perspective, the baby is not human, has no right to life, has no dignity, has no moral value, has no value of any kind. Why shouldn't Bloomberg say kill it? What's the problem? What exactly is the issue? I mean, I know what the problem is, of course. Hopefully you know what the problem is. But then again, I'm against killing babies in general. So, of course, I can be against that, against what he said, allegedly. But Warren is in favor of it. Not just in favor of it, but she believes that killing babies is not just that it's okay, but that it's a liberating act. It's an expression of a woman's autonomy and independence. So all Bloomberg was really suggesting is that this woman express her autonomy and independence. He didn't say kill it. He said express your autonomy. It was empowering. It was an empowering encouragement to this woman, not to be enslaved by the subhuman parasite in her body. From Warren's perspective, that's what it was. See, but it's hard to be consistent, to be intellectually consistent when you're pro-abortion, because it means that you have no basis, no reason to get upset about something like what Bloomberg is alleged to have said. But at the same time, you know that what he said, allegedly, is cruel and awful, so you want to be against it. You want to be outraged by it, but you can't be. Because to be outraged by it is to admit that killing babies is a moral outrage, which is exactly what you cannot admit. Speaking of morally outrageous, Bernie Sanders last night was again stumbling and bumbling around, trying to justify all the very nice and admiring things that he said about communist regimes like the one in Cuba or the one that was in communist or Soviet Russia. So I want to play a clip for you, not from last night, but from the night before at a town hall on CNN, where he's again going into the wonders of communist governments. And then we'll talk about it. Watch this.
The response was when Fidel Castro first came to power, which was when? 59? Does that sound right?
59-60.
Okay. You know what he did? He initiated a major literacy program. There was a lot of folks in Cuba at that point who were illiterate. And he formed the literacy brigade. You may read that. He went out and they helped people learn to read and write. You know what? I think teaching people to read and write is a good thing. I have been extremely consistent and critical of all authoritarian regimes all over the world, including Cuba, including Nicaragua, including Saudi Arabia, including China, including Russia. I happen to believe in democracy, not authoritarianism. But, you can't say China is another example, all right? China is an authoritarian country, becoming more and more authoritarian. But can anyone deny, the facts are clear, that they have taken more people out of extreme poverty than any country in history. Do I get criticized because I say that? That's the truth. So that is the fact. End of discussion.
So, end of discussion, he says. Not really. We will discuss what he said in a moment. But first, checking in with ExpressVPN. It seems to me that using the internet without a VPN, it's a bit like going to the bathroom without closing the door. Which, if you're like me and you live through most of your early 20s by yourself, and you got very used to doing that, but then once there's other people around, you can't do it anymore. You're exposing yourself. Why would you allow yourself to be exposed in that way? Well, that's what it's like when you use the internet without a VPN. Did you know that your internet service provider knows every single website you visit, whether it's Comcast or Verizon, whoever you use? They know everything about you, basically. They know all of your internet activity. And what's worse is they can sell this information to ad companies and tech giants who will use your data to target you. So you're being exploited as well as exposed, and all of your private information is out there. ExpressVPN puts a stop to this. It creates a secure encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet so that your online activity can't be seen by anyone. ExpressVPN works on everything, phones, laptops, routers. So everyone who shares your Wi-Fi can still be protected even if they don't have ExpressVPN. Best part is using ExpressVPN is as easy as closing the bathroom door. It's that simple. So if you're like me and you believe that your online activity is your business, you should have that privacy. Secure yourself by visiting expressvpn.com/Walsh today. Use my exclusive link. That's expressvpn.com/Walsh. You get an extra 3 months for free if you use that URL. That's expressvpn.com/Walsh. Okay, so Bernie extolling the virtues of communist regimes. First of all, those literacy programs, so-called, were really re-education programs. But even if Castro did help people be more literate, he also locked political dissidents in prison. He executed people who opposed him. He starved his own people. It was tyranny. It was oppression. So saying, yeah, but literacy, it is no different. It's no different at all than saying, yeah, but they had good policies protecting animal rights in reference to Nazi Germany, which in fact the Nazis did. They were very much into animal welfare, not so much into human welfare, but they loved animals at least. But of course, making that argument would sound morally obtuse in the extreme. This is the same thing. Here's what I would recommend, and I'm going to talk more about this tomorrow because I want to move on from politics right now. But tomorrow or the next day, we'll get more into this. What I'll say for now is, I know I have a book out, and I'm urging you to read it. So I don't want to give you too many things to read. But my book is not that long, so you can get through that. Once you do that, my next suggestion is to get a book that's a lot longer. It's called Gulag Archipelago by Solzhenitsyn. It's 3 volumes. Each volume is probably about 900 pages or so. Start with the first volume. Read that at least. This should be required reading for kids in high school. And it should be required reading for everybody. If you want to know what communism is, what it's really like, if you want to know what the real cost is for all the wonderful literacy programs and everything else, all the supposedly good things that communism allegedly brings, then read this book. A book that, of course, was banned in Soviet Russia, so much for literacy. The book is Solzhenitsyn's history of the Soviet labor camp system. He intertwines his own experience in it because he was sent to the labor camps. So it's his own story. It's sort of a memoir / general history of Soviet Russia and the labor camp system. And it's gripping, it's absorbing, it's fascinating, it's brutal to read. And it's important, especially now, as America threatens to elect a communist president. By the way, do you know why Solzhenitsyn went to prison? Because he fought in World War II for the Soviets. He was Russian. And Stalin had a system back then of sending many of the boys who and they were boys, a lot of them, young, younger than 18, who were off fighting the war. And these were the guys who had seen some of the most brutal and bloodiest, some of the worst fighting in the war. After they'd gone through that, for the sake of their country, their thank you when they got home was many of them were shipped off to labor camps. Why is that? Because Stalin was worried that they'd been exposed to Western ideas. And so he felt threatened by that. And to play it safe, he just sent a lot of them off to the labor camps. Solzhenitsyn was sent off because he had written a letter while he was on the front, written a couple of letters where he was vaguely critical of the government. And that was intercepted and seen, and he went to the labor camp system for that. I would just start reading that book. And there's no way, there's no way you could get even halfway through it and still have any positive thoughts about communism. We'll talk more about this this week because there's a lot in that book that I think is very instructive. And it's a book that, maybe Bernie Sanders should get around to reading at some point. All right, let's check in with some news. We'll go through 5 headlines here that are worth knowing about. Number one, the CDC is now warning that an outbreak of the coronavirus in the U.S. is inevitable, and we should prepare for significant disruptions to our daily life. That's the words they're using. We're told, quote, it's not so much a question of if this will happen in this country anymore, but a question of when this will happen. Now, I've been a skeptic up until now. I've seen the media hype up these epidemics many times. I've seen so much unnecessary panic over so many things that I thought this was another one of those things. It appears I may have been wrong. This is the time when, the boy's crying wolf, and maybe there actually is a wolf this time. Now, I still think there's no need to panic. I still think we should keep in mind that the death toll of this virus has a lot to do with the fact that it started in China, where their healthcare system is falling apart. Their hospitals are literally falling apart, are in shambles. So we're basing the death toll on that, the mortality rate we're basing on that. And so I think that's something we should keep in mind. It's also true, though, that the CDC doesn't generally say stuff like this for no reason. So perhaps it would make sense to take some precautions. In fact, my wife last night, we were talking about this, and she started buying supplies. We both agreed that, maybe you get, if the CDC is saying there may be some disruptions to your daily life, maybe disruptions in the supply chain, there's, if you're not able to get out of the house, if there's quarantines or something, that it makes sense to have some preservable food and stuff like that in the house. So my wife was buying a few things. She started buying freeze-dried meats. And I said to her, why can't we get regular meat and freeze it? And she said, because we have an extra freezer in the garage. And she said, well, if the power goes out. And I said, why would the coronavirus cause the power to go out? And she didn't really have a response for that, but that didn't dissuade her. So she got all of that. I guess we're now preparing for the end of human civilization as we know it, which, for the record, I still insist that human civilization is not coming to an end over this, but a little preparation is probably smart. Okay, number 2, a video that's gone viral out of the hellscape known as San Francisco shows a black man stealing cans from and attempting to assault an Asian man while a group of people stand around laughing. And the guy filming cheers it on and says, "I hate Asians." Watch this.
Look, he's scared, OG. Crack your shit. You hear that shit? Get your that nigga made a good honey. Hell no, I ain't helping this. I hate Asians.
Now, I'm just looking forward to hearing from the only white people can be racist crowd on this one. I'm sure they can explain how what you just saw there is not racist. I'm sure they have a great explanation. It can't be, because this is what we're told. A black person cannot be racist by definition. So what you saw there, not racist. Somehow. 3, yesterday, Michelle Genovese, who the media tells us is the Hot Pocket heiress, the heir to the Hot Pocket fortune, was sentenced to 5 months in jail for the college admissions scandal. She apparently spent hundreds of thousands of dollars helping her daughters cheat on tests, defrauding colleges in other ways. I think she had one of her daughters in a fake volleyball scholarship or something like that, in order to get them into good schools. And now she's going to prison for it. Not really prison. I'm sure the place she's going will be more of a sleepaway camp than a prison. I think a better penalty, a harsher one, would be to force her to eat only Hot Pockets for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for, say, a year. If you can even survive that, because of course it's not technically edible. It's not a real food product. I don't know what it is, but it's not food. Certainly the roof of her mouth would be destroyed by the end of it, with those gushes of molten cheese just scorching her mouth at every meal. Cruel and unusual punishment, I suppose. Number 4, a conservative think tank has found who they're calling the Anti Greta. You know, Greta Thunberg, of course, the 16-year-old climate alarmist. That's all over the media. Well, a conservative think tank went out and found their own blonde teenage girl. But this one is a skeptic of climate change. And now they're sending her out to make the case against climate alarmism. She's a 19-year-old German named Naomi. So this is great. This is really great, right? Conservatives have been saying for months that we shouldn't listen to teenagers on science, that teens are not science experts. And we were right about that. It's silly to use teenagers as mascots on an issue like this. And now what are we doing, I guess? We're turning around and finding our own teenage fake science expert. Here's an idea. Here's a different option. Maybe we should consider this. Maybe we could stop propping teenagers up as experts in anything. Maybe liberals could stop doing it. Conservatives can stop doing it. Because teenagers don't know anything. They're not experts in anything. They aren't authorities in anything. And if you as an adult are turning to a teenager for wisdom or insight into any subject at all, especially science, that is a symptom of your own rather staggering mental deficiencies. I mean, if you have ever heard a teenager say something, particularly in the issue, in the realm of science, and thought to yourself, wow, I learned something today. I never thought of that before. That tells you a lot more about you than it does about them. So maybe we could just stop doing this. Number 5, ABC is now working on a Bachelor spinoff, this one for senior citizens. The casting call on the website says, now casting seniors looking for love. Are you entering your golden years and looking for romance? The producers of The Bachelor are looking for active and outgoing single men and women in their golden years for a new exciting dating show. Now, I have to be honest with you. I have never seen 1 second of The Bachelor or any of its variants. I have no idea what the show even is. I've always vaguely wondered what happens on it. I've never cared enough to investigate. So I guess women are competing to be the one who gets to marry a guy, a random guy. Is that what it is? Is he rich or something? Why is it a prize? Well, anyway, speaking of mental deficiencies, I don't see how anyone with an IQ over, say, 45 could watch a show like this. But then when you consider the high ratings these shows get, that's a whole lot of sub 45 IQs out there. And these people can vote too. And if you can imagine. And that explains a lot about our about the state of our republic. I have said many times, and I do believe, that I would be in favor of automatically disenfranchising anyone who has ever watched an entire episode of a show like The Bachelor. You lose your voting rights permanently. I would be totally in favor of that. If only a candidate would have the guts to suggest a policy of that sort. But of course, no candidate would do that, because every political candidate, they love the idea of dumb people voting, because dumb people are a lot easier to manipulate. All right, so moving on Tuesday, Democrats in the U.S. Senate blocked a bill that would have required clinics and hospitals to provide basic medical treatment to infants born alive after botched abortions. Democrats tried to position the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, which is what it was called, try to position it as a radical assault on the bodily autonomy of women, an intrusion of the government into medical decisions, but it was nothing of the sort, of course. You can read the text of the bill. Despite the histrionics and the claims from people like Senator Gillibrand, who went on CNN and said that the legislation would harm women, despite all that, all the act would have done is prohibit abortionists from leaving infant children to die after they're born after a failed abortion. There is no clump of cells dodge available here. The humans in question are infant children, born, fully developed, living, breathing, outside the womb. Democrats have now declared that even they aren't worthy of legal protections. Even they apparently have no moral value. Now, as always, the pro-infanticide Democrats have the full support of the media, so CNN, with no hint of irony, actually in an article yesterday, called babies born after abortions fetuses. I believe the phrase they used was a fetus that was born. That's a baby that survives an abortion, a fetus that was born. And they distinguish in the article, they distinguish the fetus that was born from a newborn baby. They're saying those are two different things. According to CNN, a newborn baby is a child that's born alive on purpose because the mother wants the child, and a fetus that was born is a child that was born accidentally, despite the wishes of the mother. So the humanity of the baby, even outside of the womb, depends entirely on the mother's desires. And this is what pro-abortion people have been saying for a long time. They've been very explicit about it. If you ask them and you say, well, when does life begin? They'll say, life begins when the mother wants. The humanity of the child is relative to the mother's wishes and desires. And now we're being told that that logic extends even beyond the womb. Now, it was argued that this bill was unnecessary because babies so rarely manage to survive abortion, so it's just an unnecessary bill. We don't need to do this. Well, if that's true, then first of all, why oppose it? And why claim that it's an attack on women's rights? So you can't have it both ways. Either it's an unnecessary, redundant bill, or it's a terrible assault on the rights of women, or neither of those things. Of course, that it's neither of those, but it can't be both of those things. And in any case, the claim is not true. This does happen. Hundreds of children have died after surviving abortion attempts, and those are just the ones we know about, because there are only a few states that report that kind of information. And even there, you're relying on the abortion clinics to honestly report what happened. So just based on the very limited sample that we know about, it's clear that it has happened hundreds of times. So those are hundreds of infant children who were left to die and could have been saved. The current law does not protect those babies. Now, the current law does allegedly prevent abortionists from actively killing the babies who are born after a botched abortion. Although we know that even that happens. Kermit Gosnell did it for decades, killed hundreds of babies directly, and was able to do it for decades in the middle of a major American city without being stopped. But allegedly the law stops that. But the law does not require that doctors hospitals, clinics provide basic medical treatment to the babies. So what they can do is just set the baby aside and let the child die. And that is what they do, in fact, do, and now can continue doing. It's also worth noting that Democrats blocked a bill yesterday also that would have outlawed abortion after 20 weeks gestation. Babies at that point can feel pain. At 22 weeks, they can survive outside the womb. Now, of course, nobody's surprised by that move. We knew that they would block that bill, but it underscores the point that the Democrat Party at this point is nothing more than a whore of the abortion industry. That's what it is. It is morally corrupted and evil to its core. It is an enemy of life and of dignity. And if you are a decent person, you just cannot associate yourself with it. You can't be a Democrat. You can't vote for Democrats if you're a decent person who cares about human life and dignity. I'm not saying you have to be a Republican. Not at all. It's just, you can't be a Democrat, though. All right. Now, for today's daily cancellation, it is my great pleasure, in fact, to cancel The New Yorker. The New Yorker today posted a cartoon on Twitter that is leading to me now canceling The New Yorker. And when I say cancel, I don't mean canceling my own subscription. I don't have a subscription. I'm saying that The New Yorker in general is canceled now by decree, by me. So take a look at this cartoon. If you're listening on iTunes, can't see it. It's a 4-panel comic. The first panel shows a guy in the wilderness, and he says, "Oh no, it's getting cold and dark." In the next panel, he sees another guy, Mark Zuckerberg, and he says, "Thank God, another hiker, Mark Zuckerberg, can you help? I'm lost." And then Zuckerberg says, "Okay." And then Zuckerberg says, "Here are a few options. One of them is accurate. The others could be misinformation. I'll let you decide." And then in the final panel, you see his helicopter, Zuckerberg's helicopter in the background, and he says, "Well, this is me, bye." Which, that part's kind of funny. And then I guess he leaves the guy, in the wilderness as he goes away in his helicopter. Now, the point here is rather obvious. This is a criticism of Facebook's refusal to do fact checks on political ads and on other content, and their refusal to disallow the content that is not, in their opinion, truthful. The left thinks that Facebook should be performing this kind of fact-checking function on the content, mainly because the left hopes and assumes that if Facebook does fact checks, all of the right-wing content, all the pro-Trump content, all that stuff will summarily be banned because all of that is false, they think. So in this analogy, we, the helpless social media consumer, the average Facebook user, we are like wanderers in a cold wilderness, fearful, lost, darkness is closing in, and Mark Zuckerberg is the guide who can show us the way into the light and the warmth. And that is apparently how the New Yorker sees our relationship to billionaire tech moguls, which is very interesting. They see the billionaire tech mogul as this guide in the wilderness that can save our lives. We must cling to them. Show me the way, Mark Zuckerberg. That's how they see them, yet they hate billionaires. They think billionaires are evil. But they also want billionaires to decide what's true and not true, and to moderate our access to content according to the billionaires' opinions about what's true and not true. So they hate billionaires, but they also see billionaires as the only ones who can rescue us from certain death in the forest of confusion. Now, this is all nonsensical, of course. It is not Facebook's job to decide what content is true. It's not their job to evaluate political ads or political content for its adherence to the truth. Why would you trust Facebook with that task? Why would you trust Facebook any more than you would trust whoever created the content to begin with? I'm not saying you should automatically trust either one. You shouldn't. That's the point. Yes, you should make up your own mind. So in this case, in this particular wilderness of the internet, yeah, you should be given options and you can make up your own mind. You shouldn't want the billionaire in the helicopter to rescue you and make it easy. In fact, when it comes to deciphering this stuff, and deciding what's true and not true, it is better for the hiker to make up his own mind. because the other option is to trust Mark Zuckerberg blindly and to go wherever he points. And that would be foolish. So this is a very dumb cartoon. And a very, not just a dumb point, but one that contradicts what we normally hear from places like the New Yorker. And that is why the New Yorker is now canceled. All right. Got a bunch of email also. I think we'll save this email for tomorrow. So people chiming in on the issue of student loans, challenging my position that I expressed yesterday, which is that when looking for the villains in the story of the student debt crisis, I think one of the primary villains are the employers who have created, in many ways, this artificial need for degrees. And anyway, a lot of people disagree with me on that, and I'll read those emails tomorrow. MattWalshShow@gmail.com. MattWalshShow@gmail.com. We'll wrap it up there. Thanks for watching, everybody. Church of Cowards in stores now. Godspeed. The Matt Walsh Show is produced by Sean Hampton, executive producer Jeremy Boring, supervising producer Mathis Glover, supervising producer Robert Sterling, technical producer Austin Stevens, editor Danny D'Amico, audio mixer Robin Fenderson. The Matt Walsh Show is a Daily Wire production, copyright Daily Wire 2020.
Hey everybody, it's Andrew Klavan, host of The Andrew Klavan Show. You know, some people are depressed because the American Republic is collapsing, the end of days is approaching, and the moon has turned to blood. But on The Andrew Klavan Show, that's where the fun just gets started. So come on over to The Andrew Klavan Show and laugh your way through the apocalypse with me, Andrew Klavan.